Hello, this is a little bit of an experiment. I'm working on trying to figure out just exactly what's going to work ideally with the video and these other settings. I've got the camera on kind of an automatic thing right now, so it will zoom in and out by itself, it appears. I'm just going to do a little reading here and see how this goes. This is the first chapter of a story that I've written called Unopened Letters. It involves a young man named Michael and his mom, and a little bit of dialogue, and we'll see where it goes from there. The story begins, Unopened Letters. Hey, Mom. Yes, Michael. There's another letter here from that lady. That's all right. Put it in the box with the others. Are you ever going to read these? No, I don't think so. Not now, anyway. Cheryl turned back to kneading the bread on the counter, standing for a moment lost in thought. It had been 4 years since Charles, her husband, had died. Still, the thought of him going through the guardrail on his way home filled her with mixed feelings. 4 years ago, late in the summer. It had been raining for only a few minutes when he rounded the last turn, coming into the bridge at Myers Flat. As usual, he'd been driving too fast, and with the road conditions changing suddenly, he lost control. At first she was devastated, her only thoughts that Charles had been on his way home to her after the week-long sales run. My pronunciation's a little off. Home 4 or 5 days, then a week or more on sales trips. Sometimes flying, sometimes driving. This time he was driving. A few weeks later, the letters started showing up. The first one she opened and read, disbelieving, throwing it into the trash. Who was this Mrs. Hollerand? What did she mean that she and Charles had been seeing each other? 2 days later, Cheryl dug into the trash and retrieved the letter. Miss Hollerand wanted to talk to Cheryl, wanted to meet with her, explain their relationship. The letter once again thrown down. Hurt and angry, Cheryl looked at her husband's cell phone lying on his desk, finally picking it up and hitting the power button. Nothing happened. Confused for a moment, then realizing that it probably shut down as the battery gave out, she plugged it into the charger. The little chime startled Cheryl as it powered on automatically. Waiting a few moments, she finally raised it and pressed the message button. 67 missed calls, more than 20 from the same number. Pressing the play button, she held the phone up to her ear. Where are you? Are you okay? Please call me. Click. Next. I'm worried. Are you okay? Please call me. Next. Oh my God, please call me. Tell me it wasn't you that went over the bridge. Please, oh please, please God, please call me. Tears forming in Cheryl's eyes, the anguish in the stranger's voice matching her own. Setting the phone down, she found some tissue on the shelf and blotted her eyes as she tried to think this through. Who could this woman be that was so familiar with her husband? What made her think she could just call him like that? Picking up the phone, she again pressed the next button. I'm sorry for your loss, for our loss. I know you loved him, and he loved you. Please call me. We have to talk. My name is Mary. You're on speed dial number 1 on the phone. I'm on speed dial number 2. Please call me, Cheryl. We do need to talk. Phone, charger, and all now thrown into the desk drawer, Cheryl stormed out of her deceased husband's office, the door slamming shut behind her. It was a week later that the next letter showed up. Unopened, it was tossed into the desk drawer with the other unopened letter and the phone. Oops. It was a week later that the next letter showed up, unopened. It was tossed into the desk drawer with the opened letter and the phone. At least once a month for the next 2 years, a letter would show up from this Ms. Hollerand, always to be tossed into the desk drawer unopened. Somewhere near 2 months past the second anniversary of Charles' death, the letters seemed to stop, only to begin again after a few more months. This time the letters showed up only one every third or fourth month. Finally, after the beginning of the 4th year, a letter would only show up once a year, never to be opened. By now the office had been cleaned out, everything of importance gone through carefully, Cheryl always with an eye out for something, some clue as to who this woman was. There was nothing. No record of money spent, no night at a hotel unaccounted for. Everything boxed, trashed, or donated to the bishop's attic up the street. Years passed. Young Michael, now 19, enjoying the early college life where everyone changes their mind and tries one thing or another. Michael was certain he wanted to go into accounting. Then, several months later, it was computer science. Never quite sure what he wanted to do, his counselors scratching their heads as well. Coming up on summer sessions, Michael was studying the class offerings when his dorm mate came running into his room. "Michael, there are 2 guys in the counselor's office asking for you. Mr. Farmer wants you in his office. Pronto." "Did anyone say what they wanted?" Michael asked as he got up from the table. "Now," was the only response he got. Mild trepidation about his scholarships rattled in the back of Michael's mind as he walked across the commons to the counselor's complex. He was certain he'd filed properly. Even though there was a deadline nearing, the paperwork should have gotten there in plenty of time. A shudder went through Michael as he wondered if word had gotten back to the staff about the little still they had built in chemistry. They only distilled a little bit of alcohol, not even enough to get a decent buzz. But the school did have a zero-tolerance policy. No, it couldn't be that. That was last year. If something was going to come from it, it would have happened a long time ago. Walking through the doorway into the counselor farmer's office, Michael recognized his Uncle Steve, but the expression on his face was somber and very downcast. Michael suddenly was not concerned about his scholarships. Something else was wrong. "What is it, Uncle Steve?" he asked softly. "What's going on?" "Sit down, Mike. We need to talk." Apprehension turning to outright fear, Michael found a seat and asked more softly, "What's going on?" Half an hour later, as Michael left the counselor's office, his whole life had changed. His mother, who had been complaining of frequent migraine headaches, had suffered an aneurysm. The doctors had been telling her the migraines were from that time of life, that she would see them diminish over the course of the next few years. Nothing to worry about. According to the coroner's report, she had simply collapsed in the bathroom. From her position, the doctor figured she may not have even known what was happening. It appeared that she had been getting ready for bed and simply fell to the floor, toothbrush and toothpaste laying on the edge of the sink. 4.5 years later, driving into the hills north of 4.5 hours later, driving into the hills north of Fortuna, Michael slowed his car to a crawl as his home came into sight. The porch light was on. He could see some lights in the living room and in the kitchen. His mom's car was parked out front as if nothing was amiss. His Uncle Steve was already there, waiting outside. "Your Aunt Jane has some dinner ready for us, and before you say anything, you know you should eat something." "Okay, Uncle Steve. Just let me get settled a little first." Michael carried his small valise into the house, followed by his uncle. Jane said an awkward hello and offered her condolences. Somehow, Michael was holding it all together. He knew his mom had not been feeling well over the years. Her arthritis had been hard on her. Even in her last phone conversation with him, she had said that she was very tired and ready to lie down and take a long nap. Michael pooh-poohed her and reminded her that she was terribly young to be that tired. She laughed, and the conversation drifted to school and friends. Walking slowly up the stairs to his room, Michael thought about his mom, all of the fun they had had in the house. The few men his mom had brought into the house left little impression. None that played ball or chess. Few had time for a rambunctious boy. His mom was ever the constant in his life. As he neared the top of the stairs, his uncle called out, "Do come back down soon. We have a lot to talk about." Nodding but saying nothing, he turned and headed to his bedroom. Walking by his mom's room, he stopped and looked in. The bed was turned down as if she was just getting ready to go to bed. Nothing was disturbed or out of position. The coroner's men were neat and efficient. Even the bathroom light had been turned off. In the distance, Michael could hear low talking between his aunt and uncle. There were several other cars parked along the street, so he was certain they were not by themselves. As he looked around the room, he tried to remember which relatives lived close enough to come visit, which of his mom's friends would be there. Sighing to himself, Michael knew that it was going to be a long evening. Down the hallway, his own room was neat and tidy. Though he had come to visit on breaks, he knew he left his room in a bit of a disarray. Though when he came... let me try this again. Down the hallway, his own room was neat and tidy. Though when he had come to visit on breaks, he knew he left his room in a bit of a disarray. His mom always cleaned up after him. His bathroom was clean and spotless. Everything had been dusted, sheets changed, pillows fluffed. Even the few odds and ends on his desk had been neatly arranged. Sitting on the edge of the bed, looking around, he could feel his throat tightening as his breathing became labored. Brave face. He could make it through the night, one moment at a time. Standing to head on downstairs, he turned and straightened the blanket where he had sat, chuckling weakly at the irony of how he had never before taken the same care, knowing his mom would come through behind him and straighten things for him. It had become a bit of a game that they used to play. Sometimes he would bump one of the pictures on the wall out of place, maybe leave a drawer open just a quarter of an inch. Even his typing paper next to the computer, he might turn several pages around so that they curled differently from the others. His mom would always find what he had deliberately messed up. He chuckled softly as he backed out of his room, seeing his mom's touch in every part of his life. Putting on his brave face, as his mom used to call it, he headed on down the stairs to greet what lay ahead. Next is Chapter 2. So that kind of ends this test reading, and the motion tracking on the camera is kind of goofy. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. So we'll just see how it goes. And that's it. 12 minutes.